Today we're going to be changing the oil in the 2022 Mach 1. I bought this last July, so it's about a year right now. I've got 4,800 miles on it. I know a lot of you are thinking you need to change your oil right away. Ford doesn't recommend that any longer. Back in the day, you go back to the 60s, 70s, those cars, the tolerances weren't as tight as what they are today. The materials were different that they used. You had a cast iron block. The machining processes weren't as good or refined as what they are today. So yes, back then you needed to change your oil pretty early on in the process. Today, that's just not the case anymore. Today's oils are better, the tolerances are tighter, and the materials they use are machined much finer. So you don't have that particulate floating around in the engine. Now, that's my take. Of course, it's your car. You can do what you want. If you want to change your oil 800 miles into the process, go right ahead, spend the money. And I'm going to show you everything that I use in this oil change. I'm also going to show you some ways to make this as clean as you can possibly do it. Your results may vary depending on what you do there, but this can be a pretty messy job if you don't take the couple of minutes to ensure that it isn't. Now I've got 10 quarts of 5W30 here, an FL500S for my filter. This is the only filter wrench I use 95% of the time on cars that have a screw-on self-contained filter. I've got my Adelphi headlamp here because I want to see what I'm doing, and it's going to be dark under the car. I also have this piece of tin. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with that. This is real flimsy, easy to cut tin. Now, step one for me is I'm going to get this thing up in the air. I have a lift. You don't need a lift to do this. You do need to get it up in the air. So jack and jack stands, a pair of ramps, although if you have the handling pack cars, yeah, it might be a little rough. You might want to do something with some 2x4s to make sure you're not rubbing that splitter. So let's do first things first here. If you're new to the S550 and you get underneath your vehicle and notice this plastic doohickey as your drain plug, well, yeah, that's what's going on. Ford switched to that plastic style with an O-ring in it. We're going to pull that, drain the oil. UPR makes some really great products. They are not a sponsor of mine. I have one on order. It's not here yet. So I'm going to reuse this time. I do plan to replace with a UPR product next time I change the oil. But the first thing I do is just twist this off. So I'm going to get my drain pan under here and make that happen. Let's twist that and release it. Oh boy, that's a mess. Now at some point that's going to start to slow down. So what I did was crafted this little tray. I'm going to let you see what's going on here. I have two little tiny hooks on there in the back. That's why I like having that real soft metal. And I like to let as much of this engine oil drain out as possible. But that little tray is just going to sit there and get the excess. I'm going to probably let this drain for 10-15 minutes because why not? I'm not in a hurry. So this is the drain plug. It's just a screw-in type. You can see it's threaded here. It's got a single O-ring on it. You really want to check this O-ring. Some people will tell you not to reuse this. I'm going to reuse it this time. The O-ring is good. There's no cracks. There's no flaws that I can see with it. So I'm going to reuse it. That's your oil plug. It just screws in, snaps in place. That's it. And this comes out just by unscrewing it. There's an access cover here. There's a 7mm screw right here. That needs to be removed. It's real simple screw. It's not very difficult to pull that out. So there's our oil filter. It's way up in. So after you get the access cover off, and now you've got a harness that's in the way. So I'm going to fashion something out of cardboard to make a drip rail on this thing. That's going to have medium success probably at best. This filter is in a bad location. That is not a FL500S. Now, no matter what I do, things are going to get messy here with this oil filter. I've cut this piece of cardboard, but I've curved the end of it because, I'm going to put it up in there, and the oil filter's curved. So the idea is to try to get under it as best I can. So I'll show you what I did here. This harness is really in the way. So I took a bungee and put it on there just to pull it back temporarily. I have my cardboard in there. I know this thing's going to be messy. There's not going to be much I can do about it. But I'm going to do the best I can. So I'm going to come in here and loosen this filter from the side. So I can get on her. Oh, you son of a bitch. Okay, let's do that again. I got a couple turns on it with a wrench. It should be hand loose now. There we go. And I'm just going to loosen this thing ever so slightly and try to get the oil to start coming out. No oil yet. Oh, that's coming down the wrong side. I'm just going to let that drip. Maybe that'll work for a little bit. Oh, there we go. That's what I didn't want. Yeah, I don't know how you do this without making a mess. And she's just draining everywhere. I got a rag. Oh, great. Now I just got it going everywhere. So can you do this without making a mess? I'm not sure. At this point, I just can't say. Everything I've tried to counteract this thing has not worked out. I definitely am not going to spin it off real fast because oil's going to come flying out of this engine when I do that. So I'm probably just going to loosen it here and then try to hold the filter up against the engine. Try to drain it down off that piece of cardboard. Well, that didn't go great, did it? I made a mess. It's not too bad, really. I pulled the filter off as slow as possible, used a rag, and the piece of cardboard helped to make some of that stuff flow. The issue is there's a bump out on the filter housing, and adhesion from the oil sticks to that bump and it starts to run down a different path. I'm not sure how you really get around that. It's going to be a tough one. I do know I'm glad I didn't take it to the dealer because, you know, they just spin it off and let things go where they go and maybe do some mop-up duty and that be that. The next step is to put the new filter on. This is I'm going to put the part number up here, FL500S. The thing that's different about the Mach 1s and the GT350s is they tell you not to lubricate this O-ring. If you've been changing oil all your life like I have, that's odd. I think the reason for that is the 5.2, the Voodoo engine had a lot of vibration issues, and these things would, you know, shake loose. So they tell you not to put that on there. I'm going to follow their Ford's instructions and not lubricate this thing. I'm just going to spin it on and see where we go. So we got our new filter in, and that's good. Did I make a mess? Well, a little bit. This little bump out here is the issue. That's where the oil adheres to, and it just goes everywhere. I am glad I pulled this harness back. There's a little bit of oil on it, but not nearly as bad as it could have been. So all that's left to do now is fill the oil. It's 10 quarts, 5W30. I like to use full synthetic. I know some people out there are using a blend. Not my choice. I was a jet engine mechanic for 14 years in the U.S. Air Force. We use full synthetic on jet engines, which are, while this is not a cheap engine, a jet engine's a lot more costly. And if the U.S. government thinks they should use full synthetic, I'm not going to argue with them. Ford gave you this tiny little oil fill here. There's also an O-ring on that. Looks kind of similar to the drain plug. But I'm going to get a funnel, and we're going to fill it with a funnel because no way I'm hitting that tiny little hole. So this is my second bottle of oil, and it's 5 quarts. So we're going to pour that in and not get crazy. When you pour one of these bottles, make sure you pour it like this on the side. That way you don't get that glug glug action going. It's the nice, easy, smooth pour. I'm going to check a couple of my other levels here, my brake fluid, my antifreeze. I'm also going to pull my catch can because I know that thing's got some oil in it. And the best time to do that is between oil changes. These cars don't generate that much oil that you have to check it constantly, but it is something to check at oil changes for sure. This is a FL500S. This is what the factory calls for on the Mach 1. And I bought a spare because it's not like I'm not going to be doing this again. And this is what came on the factory. And that's a FOMO co-filter. It's not as big as the 500S. Not sure why they use this. Maybe they're cheaper. This is a part number you can't get anywhere. So, yeah, I don't know what the deal is with that. It's similar to the 500S. It's the same size gasket. It's the same size filter. But it's just not as tall. So it doesn't have as much filtering capacity. So those that are in the, I want to change my oil early camp, you could point to this filter and give that as the reason why. It just doesn't filter as much. The next thing we want to do is reset the oil life. So we go down to the settings button, select that. I'll give you your settings. Then you're going to toggle down to advanced settings. Hit OK. Vehicle. OK. Oil life reset. OK. Now I just reset this, but we'll pretend like I didn't. We'll hit OK to reset. It resets. And we're good. So now my oil life is reset. You don't need to do it, but it helps. Can't hurt any. I've got my oil pressures all the way up in the safe zone, so I'm good there. And we're ready to rock for another 5,000 miles. So that's it. My yearly maintenance is done. Hopefully this helped you. Like I said, if one of you out there figured out a way to get that oil filter off with a minimal amount of mess, please leave it in the comments. I didn't make out too bad. There was a little bit of cleanup there, but not, a mess everywhere all over the wire loom. And so I'm sure if I took it to a dealership, it would have been much worse. I prefer to do it myself because, I care about those type of things. And not to knock people that work at the dealership, but they got to get cars in and out, and that's their job. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up so that other people see it. Also, if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. That certainly would be appreciated. Until next time, we'll see you.